Married former Congressman Chris Lee abruptly resigned following a report that he was searching the internet for dates. Since then, Republicans have quickly organized around Assemblywoman Jane Corwin, and they have repeatedly called on Governor Cuomo to set a date for a special election in the 26th congressional district. But instead of heeding that call, the governor has instead proposed changes to the current law. Now, instead of setting the special election date 30 to 40 days from his proclamation, the governor wants 70 to 80 days. He says this will help the boards of elections comply with federal law. Joining me tonight to talk more about this new bill and other mysteries of New York's infamously Byzantine election law is one of the state's top election lawyers. He is Jerry Goldfeder. Thank you for your time. You will have to unravel the mysteries for us because, seriously, I find this really mystifying. There's a reason why the governor wants this to happen. It has to do with military ballots. Can you please explain?
Well, right. We want our military to be able to vote in all of our elections, and special elections happen pretty quickly. And so I think it makes all the sense in the world to extend the time from the time you proclaim a special election to the actual voting, so that the military folks who are in Iraq and Afghanistan and throughout the world can vote.
So just to be clear, though, when it comes to a special election, the governor must call one at a certain point. Is that correct?
Well, it actually depends. For a special election for United States Congress, the Constitution of the United States says that there should be a special election. For vacancies in the state legislature, the governor has discretion. For the United States Senate, there doesn't even have to be a special election. We know that because the governor, pursuant to law, Governor Patterson, appointed Kirsten Gillibrand, and a special election was held a year and a half, 2 years after the fact. So only when it comes to the United States House of Representatives does the governor actually have to call a special election. And there's no time frame by which he needs to do it, and he uses his best judgment.
Right. Well, in some cases, for example, with the 29th, which we've talked a lot about on this program because, of course, we have viewers who are living there, they went unrepresented for a number of months because it was Eric Massa, who, of course, resigned in this sexual scandal with his aides. And then there was nothing called until a weird situation where there were actually two elections that took place on the same day. One was the special to fill the seat through the rest of the year. That would be November to January. And then another was concurrently running for the next 2-year term. I mean, that is an option, but that would leave people in the 26th unrepresented for almost 2 years. And
by the way, that's not uncommon. Where I live in the west side of Manhattan, the last time we had a special election, Jerry Nadler, who took office after Congressman Ted Weiss died, Jerry Nadler ran in 2 elections on the same date to fill the rest of a term and then to start a new term. So it depends upon when the vacancy occurs. There are all sorts of permutations that occur. But the long and short of it is you want to call a special for House of Representatives, you have to call a special election, and you want to do it in a timely way, and you want to do it that's right. So here, the governor, and I think rightly so, has decided to make certain that this would be a good time to change special elections to make certain that military voters can actually vote pursuant to federal law.
Okay, and I know that you will probably not play ball on this, but I will bring it up anyway. I mean, isn't there a possibility that there's also a political agenda here, or at least a political consideration, such that the longer that the governor buys time, you say he should call a special, he must call a special, he should do it in a timely fashion. There is this problem with military ballots hanging out there. He has chosen to address it now, but he won't move forward until the legislature addresses this. And the legislature, I mean, let's be fair, this is not high on their priority list with the budget hanging out there and other things. It buys the Democrats time, while the Republicans have already coalesced around a candidate, to figure out if there's a third-party candidate who comes in and maybe they've got an avenue in a GOP-dominated district to win.
You're so conspiratorial. You're so sinister.
Yes,
you're so jaded.
I am. You don't agree.
Well, you know, I have a feeling that the legislature is going to address this. This is an important issue. It relates to the military voting. And I don't ascribe any political motives because whether the special election is held today or a month from today or 6 weeks from today, generally speaking, the political forces of a particular district are aligned in a particular way, and it's not going to change very much. So I think that you ought not to look at it with from that prison.
I'm trying to be less cynical in my old age. The thing about military ballots, though, is that we've actually been sued over them. The state has been sued over them in the past, and there was a waiver that was issued to the state that enabled us to hold our primary in September, the way that we generally do.
Right.
However, again, now the Department of Justice is saying, we gave you this waiver and we thought you were going to fix this. You haven't yet, state.
Right.
And they would like to see
they being the federal
feds
government
would like to see New York change its primary date from September to June. It would be really changing it back, which I didn't know. You have told me. This used to be the reality in New York.
Yeah, until the 1970s, we would have June primaries. We don't have to move it back to June. We could move it to the middle of August. And I'm not so sure that's a good idea. And the reason for this is the military personnel need a certain amount of time before a primary election in order to vote and get their votes in. And so our primary election, the dates of it at this juncture, need to be changed. The federal government is right about that, and I think that the governor and legislature are going to change it, whether it's to the middle of August or to June, where it was up until the 1970s, remains to be seen. But we do need to do that in order to comply with federal law.
Do you think, generally speaking, like, for example, right now, there are certain things that parties govern. For example, the state GOP is thinking about changing its presidential primary rules back to away from winner-take-all to a proportionate situation where candidates actually have to vie for support. Instead of you win a certain percentage of support, you get the whole state's electoral votes. Instead of that, or not electoral votes, rather, the support from the convention delegates, and then you get that when you go to seek the nomination at the convention. The problem, though, is that these are connected by parties. This is not something that state law dictates. But state law is very confusing in general, state election law. Isn't it time maybe to simplify it all, like the tax code, when people are always yelling about simplifying the tax code?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
I'll be happy to participate with you and all sorts of other people to see how we can streamline the election law. You know,
but it would put you out of business, Jerry, don't you think?
No, not at all. It would do my heart good if our election law was simpler. You know, we just went through this spectacle in Chicago about Rahm Emanuel, whether he was a resident long enough in order to run for mayor. In New York City and in most of the cities in New York State, you have to be a resident on the day you're elected.
That's right, yeah.
So, and we have 62 cities, we have 900 villages, we have 500 and some odd towns. We have different rules for elections throughout our state, and of course we have different rules for elections throughout the country. In Philadelphia, you have to be a resident if you want to run for mayor for 3 years. In Indianapolis, it's 5 years. In all sorts of cities and towns and villages throughout the state, there are all sorts of different regulations. It would be great if we had a much more streamlined election law in New York State. It would be better for the voters.
I just want to mention quickly, although we're pretty much out of time, the governor signed into law today a measure that allows villages to continue to use those old lever voting machines, which I miss
We
personally.
love those.
I miss them. And we had a lot of viewers complain about they didn't love the electronic voting machines. It just seems to me that had we done this earlier, just complied with HAVA, the Help American Vote Act, earlier, we wouldn't be in this situation where villages are scrambling to keep up with the new technology.
Well, I'm glad villages have this extra time to learn about the optical scanning machines. It's good for them to use the lever machines. We love the lever machines. But all sorts of municipalities and towns throughout the state learned the new machines pretty quickly. So I think the villages will get the hang of it, and their voters will learn how to use it. Because after all, even though we're talking about village elections, all those people who live in villages have already used the optical scanning devices in other kinds of elections. So it's not exactly really clear why they needed to do it, but I think it's a cost-saving device for the villages, and I'm in favor of that.
Okay, well, we are unfortunately out of time. We'll be having you back, though, Jerry Goldfeder. I want to thank you very much.
Good to see you.